On behalf of the Wessex section, I'd like to welcome you all to this latest seminar in a very long line of seminars that the Wessex section has been offering over the years. My name's Andy Hudson, and I'm part of the Wessex section committee. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Cevn Vibert. Cevn is a member of the Wessex committee and is chair of the Institute Cyber SIG Special Interest Group. Cevn has a very long career, he tells me, in various ranges of bits of engineering, and recently, over the last decade or more, has spent a great deal of time focusing on physical and cyber security. And we're all looking forward to hearing you talk about the topic, Cevn. So over to you and take it away.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy, and welcome everyone to this Wessex talk. It's a combined Wessex and cyber talk, and I'll bring up the PowerPoint and we can talk through some of the subjects. What I'm looking to do is to talk about the sort of subject in general. It's very similar to some of the talks that I'm giving out to the industry at the moment, which is sort of off-gem based, but obviously my sort of experience based. We had a lot of interest in cyber, a lot of questions. The last time we ran a cyber event with the Wessex section, so I'm looking forward to some questions at the end. Right, I will bring up the PowerPoint and we can start off with the presentation. So if I go to that screen and then shrink you guys down, so you should be able to see the presentation on screen at the moment. I'll go to full screen, so if there's any questions or hands up, guys interrupt, because I won't be able to see them. So the inertial threat, accelerating security resilience. The times they are changing. For those who don't know me, this is a quick intro. Well, I say quick, it's a couple of pages of intro, and the presentation is available for those of you afterwards. And we are recording this session as well. So as Andy introduced me, I'm the chair of the Institute Cyber SIG. We're one of the fastest growing SIGs in the Institute. There's a lot of interest from a wide range of people on a wide range of topics. And we've also just recently, and I'll go into this a bit more detail I think later on, we've also partnered up with ISA as well. They're global cyber security group. So we have a kind of a cross meeting partnership with them. So again, if you're a member of the SIG, you can also join the ISA meetings as well. I helped to build the new UK Cybersecurity Council, which you've probably seen a lot of news about, certainly in our industry. They are going out to a wide range of public sort of questions in order to form an opinion for the future. So really interested in any feedback on that score. I'm currently a senior cyber compliance manager at Ofgem, basically looking after the sort of downstream gas and electric market from a cyber security point of view. I think you're not on mute, Andy, at the moment. I'm an IBT cyber consultant, and I do a lot of chairing and speaking. Also fellow of the BCS and a member of the NCSE's community of interest. You're welcome to find me on LinkedIn, and I'm easy to Google. So the kind of projects I've been involved in the past is control rooms. Top left is I think it's Torness nuclear power station control room, and I've done a number of other different types of critical national infrastructure control rooms, projects, consultancy, etc. I started out life doing automation control systems for big boys toys like nuclear fuel reactors and things, and then I went on and did more and more SCADA systems, MES and cyber security. Been involved in really big projects in the UK and abroad as well. Done a lot of talking. as you guys will find out, and those who know me, I talk a lot, and it's evangelizing industrial security in the wider sense of the word. So security in terms of physical security, cyber security, and also operational security, basically how you carry out your business. And there's a lot of interest in this area, which seems to be growing. I actually do real engineering too. So I'm currently out on site at the moment doing real stuff. So I've been involved in all sorts of different projects in the UK and abroad, sort of hands-on, boiler suit, climbing around inside systems. And I heartily recommend that you reflect on your own story and tell others, because engineering needs all the sort of bolstering that it can get. And some people's stories are really fascinating. Some things that I picked up in a number of conferences recently is some themes about interconnectedness, trust, safety in all its forms, shared knowledge, experiences, and it's things that many of you know me and seen me talk before. You'll sort of recognize some of the themes. Things like stories. We've been lacking stories in cybersecurity up until quite recently, and now the news is absolutely full of it. And I'll go on to talk about some of those. So, multiple attacks and outages on industrial systems around the globe are being reported by media on a regular basis. I won't read the rest of it because you can see it on screen, but there are significant improvements needed. There always has been some resistance to the implementation of these systems, certainly from a wide range of management layers. So we're really focused on how we can get that communication going across management layers. The times they are changing. So this is one of the themes that I sort of proposed in some recent conferences. And that's because, again, those of you who've seen me talk before, we've always been talking about doom and gloom and how people really need to sort of step up to the mark and improve their cybersecurity. What I'm seeing, and I'm hoping that others can reflect on this and feedback on it, is that we are seeing some improvements. So it is improving, and it is improving at an improving pace. The problem is that the threats are increasing. When I first built this presentation, I was feeling pretty upbeat. Actually, with the nation states back on the list and the warnings issued by many national certs, then the story is really about shields up. So we need to improve our security and resilience at an ever improving pace. And that's proving to be quite a struggle for many industries. So when I talk about industries, I'm usually involved in industrial industries of some kind, but actually this applies to all industries, all forms of commerce, and actually you at home. So you need to ensure that your security is up to the mark. The problem is, unless you're into cyber, you're not quite sure what that mark is. But there are many guidances available, and you can look on the InstMC website, and it will give you a wide range of different guidances. So the battlefield is constantly expanding. Internet of Things, connectedness. We're trying to make everything connect to everything else in order to improve our life, our efficiency, our communications. The problem with that is that it's increasing the complexity, and it doesn't necessarily map in terms of security. The more things you have connected, the more ingress points you potentially have. So what are the biggest challenges that we're seeing in making improvements to resilience? And I've made a list there. One of the biggest ones is often corporate will, right down to the bottom of the list. So corporate will is where people in the boardroom or in senior management are aware of the risks, aware of the threats, aware of the risks to their business, and they provide resources, money, people, time, in order to bolster these problems. So improving your resilience can often be done through carrying out the right kind of business level risk assessments, which have been mapped up from process risk assessments. Again, there are many industries who don't carry this out. And it's not just in the industries that I'm involved in regulating. I've seen this throughout my career. So we need to educate people as to what they need to do. So what are the threats, what they need to do to counter those threats, and we need to educate them in terms of the processes that they go through in order to resolve some of those threats to their business. And it's often about asking senior management, do they know the actual threats to their, the threats as in the threats, the risk threats to their operations. So if I installed a particular bit of software on the system, do you know that this would stop you? Do you know how long it would take to recover from that stoppage? So if I put a crypto wiper on your systems, could you then go and reinstall all of the computers from a backup? Do you know that you can do that? Have you run any form of exercises to show the business that it's able to do that? Have you done this regularly in order to create some kind of muscle memory? These are issues that many organizations are yet to even start down the road on. But we are seeing in a wide range of industries that people are actually getting aware of these steps to move. So there are lights at the end of the tunnel. The problem is the bad guys are always getting better. So I was going to run a survey, and I often do this in conferences. Very difficult to do this on Teams. So I'm going to ask you to think about it yourselves and to ask other people in your life. So the first question is, are you personally responsible for health and safety? So I'm not asking for answers, I'm asking you to think about it. And also then ask, are you personally responsible for cybersecurity? So those are the two questions. And again, those of you who see me in conference, I ask this often, and I look around the room, and I think the most I've ever got in terms of hands up for either of those questions is about 50% of the audience. And you've got to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, because some people are obviously just can't be bothered to put their hands up. But actually, it's an interesting measure, because I recently attended a conference on power system protection up in Newcastle. I asked the same question, and I got around about 85% of the audience putting their hands up for both questions. So for me, that's another indication that things are getting better. People are realizing their own responsibilities, and they're realizing how that links into their business operations. That's my hope anyway. So this is what we do as Ofgem. We provide guidance and advice. We carry out inspections to perform some form of assurance, and we also carry out enforcement. So if people haven't done their homework, then there may be some kind of enforcement needed. So this is typically what we do, and we do this for all of the critical, so the operators of essential services in the downstream gas and electric market. So we don't do things like refineries or rigs. That's all carried out by health and safety under the same kind of mechanisms that we carry it out. And we do this largely around NIS currently. So NIS is the Network and Information Systems Regulations. These are all freely available on the net to download. This is just an example. So an operator of essential services, an OES, must take appropriate and proportionate technical and organisational measures to manage risks. They must also prevent and minimize impacts, ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk posed, and regard any guidance by a competent authority such as Ofgem. So these are just some guidance measures, but actually these are regulatorily enforceable. So it's an interesting means of not only advising people, tempting them, cajoling them, pressurizing them in some way to carry out some form of improvement, but we also have regulatory powers. So we can fine these operators, we can request through an enforcement action that they carry out various measures within a timely manner. There are other elements of the regulations that we can also use. So I talk about downstream gas and electric because I'm working with Ofgem at the moment, but actually these same principles of cybersecurity and resilience applies to all industries, companies and people. So if you are in any other form of industry, think about cybersecurity and resilience. So we add on that word, or cyber resilience. Think about that in terms of the businesses that you work with, are involved in, or have at home, in terms of, we lost connection then. So that's the market sector. Legislation, that's happening around the world. Different countries are leading in some areas. We're seeing an increase in legislation around different countries, and we're also finding quite a lot of benefit in linking up competent authorities around the world, talking about different means of providing legislation, guidance, and enforcement where necessary. And it's interesting to see that the pace of change of these improvements is increasing. There was a recent announcement, I think even today, about in the US, for instance, where the president has issued a sort of presidential decree that primary operators have to report any form of cyber attack. So we currently have that, for instance, in the operators that we manage. We have that where if they have a NIS incident, which affects a certain number of people for a certain number of time, then they must inform us of a cyber outage. But they don't have to inform us of everything. So that may change in the future, and the regulations are being reviewed constantly. I've got this little symbol at the bottom, shields up, and you'll see that quite a lot because it's one of the sort of favourite phrases at the moment, and that's mainly due to the current war carrying out in East Europe, where there's a lot of cyber warfare going on, which may have significant impacts on all our lives and businesses, not necessarily directed at us. So the brakes to the pace of change are often the typical OT cyber excuses, and they range, they are very, very traditional. Nobody's going to attack us. I've got systems that nobody understands. I've got legacy kit that nobody understands how to attack. But why would they attack me? I'm just a biscuit manufacturer. You know, those kind of excuses are no longer relevant because everyone can be attacked in some way, and it might not be directed specifically at you, but if you're connected in some way, and it's not just the internet, obviously, USB keys. If you're connected in some way, then you can be attacked. So you need to be ready. And the traditional phrase is, it's not if, but when. So expect to be attacked. If you are attacked, what's the worst that can happen to your operations, to your data, to your information, to others that are connected to you? And can you recover from that? How long will it take you to recover? Other excuses are things like, well, the bosses aren't telling us to do anything about it. There's no news at home, as in, you know, none of our competitors are getting hit. nobody around me. I haven't heard of anyone getting hit. So all of these excuses are just slowing the pace of resilience improvement, and we've got to get past that. The need for change is not new. So I've been bleating and wailing and soapboxing, like today. Not only me, but many of my colleagues, people I meet and have talked with in conferences. I've chaired conferences and spoke on forums and danced around on stage, pumping my fist and beating the air and wailing, saying, guys, we've got to do something better. And what I'm seeing across lots of different forums is that these things are changing. We are seeing more guidance coming out, but the pace of improvements is glacial compared to the pace of improvements of the bad guys. So we've got to get past these excuses. One way you can do that is to join our special interest group. We've currently got over 260 members. So that's up there in the big time in the Institute of Measurement and Control. So these are people who are interested in cyber. Many people come along to our meetings. We hold them relatively regularly. We're all volunteers, so action comes and goes, but we are seeing a great level of interest in providing things like guidance documents, things like new education programs, facilitating education programs, linking in with other institutions, other government departments. So there's a whole load of actions being taken care of, and we invite more. So we invite more interest from people who come along and help, and who have ideas that maybe plug into the CyberSig in some way. So the news. I'm sure we're all doing a lot of doom scrolling at the moment, looking at what's happening in East Europe and wondering how far it's going to go, wondering about the poor people that are getting affected by this. But if you look in the news about cyber attacks, these are typical kind of news items that have been popping up, and you can see from them, and if you look at anything about things like the anonymous group, there is potentially some serious escalations imminent in the cyber world. So we exhort everyone to put the shields up, to improve your cybersecurity in some way, look at what you've got and look at how you can survive the worst that can happen to you on a cyber attack. And the worst is often, but it depends on your business and how you've done your risk assessments, but it could be, for instance, you need to buy new computers because the computers you've got have been just completely wiped. Can you recover them? Can you recover them in a sensible amount of time? Do you have the skill sets to do that? So think about all of these things, and then you're ready. You're ready for whatever can happen. This is something that the anonymous group posted about. So this was out in the Twitter world, and it's an example where they were exhorting people to attack a power system. Obviously, this is when anonymous are helping people to attack Russia in some way. So they found a power system, they found all the diagrams online, they found full access to the SCADA system. So if you have a SCADA system in your site, this is the kind of thing that could happen to you. So be ready, be prepared. Hacker groups, if you think there's just anonymous, these are some of the others, and you can see their current alignment. This was a threat intel posted by Equinix in the beginning of March. So you can see that there are a lot of different types of hacker groups, and these are only the ones who are focused around Ukraine and Russia. So I'm just making you aware, make sure your shields are up. So recent initiatives. So we're looking at different forms of legislation change. We've seen quite a lot of improvements from the skills crossover. This is where we get people moving from IT into OT, OT into IT, and also operational people moving backwards and forwards. So we're seeing some positive impacts from it. There are negative elements to it, like people going and doing OT cyber when they've had very little experience, for instance, but that happens in all industries. So people are generally aware of it. World media coverage, so that's doing great guns for the cyber industry because it's in all the newspapers, all the media outlets, and in cyberspace all the time. There are new compliance tools being brought out. So maybe 5 years ago there was quite a sparse amount of them. Now there's many. Obviously there are good and bad, but there are many more to choose from now. And that helps you understand the gaps in your industry, the gaps in your cyber resilience, and maybe also gives you tips on how to improve that. But awareness is part of an improvement program. There are many more investments. So Ofgem, for instance, is investing billions in many of these companies, and they are making significant improvements. Big step changes are expected in the near years. Education, we're seeing a lot more programs now, so that there's a whole range of cyber universities, and there's a lot of cyber education outlets that are pushing all sorts of different themes for people. So the availability of education is greatly increased. We're carrying out inspection programs. Many other competent authorities are doing this. So this is going on site, putting on the high vis and actually walking around and asking hard questions of people in terms of their resilience. And that's obviously physical, cyber and operational resilience. And resilience warnings. So we're seeing NCSE and other outlets pushing out warnings to say, shields up, guys. So the UK government's doing a lot of different initiatives, so linking legislation to actions. We're carrying out NIS inspections. We're doing CEO talks, for instance, so we found that very, very positive, where our CEO talks to operators, CEOs in a group sessions or occasionally individually, and we're raising awareness. That's then seen to trickle downwards to the organisations. So we've been hitting people at the engineering and management layers, and now we're going in at the corporate level, and that's been very useful. There's a lot of government guidance papers now. NCSE is doing all sorts of outreach programs, and there are a lot of forums. So if you're not part of a cyber forum and you have interest in it, then I recommend that you hunt them down and join up to them, because many of them need a lot of volunteers, and the Institute's CyberSig is one of those. The government's brought out a new national security plan, lots of new initiatives in there. It's not easy bedtime reading because there's a lot of it, but we're going to see a lot of new change programs that are coming out of it, and there's investment behind them. There's the new Cyber Council, some new test labs that are being built. So we're seeing more and more labs where people can actually play with hardware and software and try things out. And we're seeing an increase in different forms of alerts. So you can, again, sign up to many different alerts and get intel about problems that are coming towards you, so you can be ready for them and get your shields up. So in 2022, we are getting increased positive feedback from things like inspections. So going around and inspecting organisations, you expect there to be challenges, a challenging sort of environment, but we're getting a lot of positive feedback from them. And part of it is helping the sort of engineers and managers actually get visibility into the boardroom. We're seeing an increase in open discussions, participations and workshops, so we've been running them. Many other competent authorities have been doing that. And we're also seeing a lot of different types of agencies and companies carrying out education workshops. So that seems to be increasing in number. So they're all indicating an improved proactiveness and cross-organizational involvement. I had to read that one out. So that's a positive thing that I think we're seeing. So there is an improvement. There's an accelerated change of improvements, but we've still got a long way to go. There is engagement across organizational divides, but again, we've got a long way to go. And there is increased collaboration internally and externally. So we're getting organizations working together, and it's not just on a paid basis, but it's on a research basis or a basis of mutual collaboration. And we know that regulations and legislation will continue to improve. Enforcements will escalate for poor performers. So enforcement, so Ofgem has carried out we're starting up the program of enforcements, and we're moving through that process now, and we're going to see, we hope, greater improvements from all sorts of operators because of that. The guidance will continue to evolve, so we're always bringing out new types of guidance documents. Many of them are available off our websites, and again, you can get the same from all of the other types of competent authorities, and you can get many of them from NCSE as well, and other organisations. So there's a lot of free education available as well, and integration of security groups like we're seeing with ISA Global and our Institute CyberSig. So the future. So our aim is obviously lights on and heating on. What we're hoping for is that people will understand their processes and understand the resilience of those processes and improve them. So looking at their process, their corporate and their intercorporate resilience. So again, this is something that we are championing in terms of understanding or getting organisations to understand where they fit in the mesh of our island of the UK, for instance. So not just their own resilience, but how their resilience affects others. We're seeing increased preparedness and exercising. So if your organisation hasn't done a cyber resilience exercise, I very much recommend it. Because if you haven't tried something, you don't know where the gaps are. And if you try it enough times successfully, then you'll build up muscle memory within the corporation. So people will know what they've got to do when something really bad goes wrong. And we're looking for organisations to develop a culture of security as already exists in health and safety. And that's a big step for cybersecurity. We want it to be on everyone's lips. We want it to be on posters. We want it to be on everyday thoughts, so that when we ask, are you personally responsible for cybersecurity? Everyone in the room says, of course we are. The problem is cyber attack events will also continue while we're improving, and it will continue with new strengths. It's the war. So the future is brighter. We think that more recruits and more experience is starting to counter the suitably qualified and experienced personnel drought. We think it's starting to do that. But there needs to be more focus and understanding at all levels to win more hearts and minds of senior execs. And all of that will build a better environment for us from a cyber resilience point of view. So we think that 2022 is a year to feel uplifted, despite all the doom. So we've had a whole range of different dooms hit us recently, but we are seeing an improvement. So we're saying that the future is brighter, but we shouldn't be complacent. We do need an increased pace of change. So we do need you all to do this evangelizing in your organizations, is to change people's hearts and minds. So we know that the opportunity is there. There's a major war going on at the moment, which has got large cyber components to it. The opportunity to use that in your organizations to say we've got to put those shields up is an opportunity not to be missed. So you need to find out what is needed to improve your resilience. How can you help your organization's cyber resilience? And think, not only today, but in all these conferences and forums, think, what have you learned? And don't forget, shields up. So I've talked about the CyberSig. Don't need to say it again. I'm sure you're all going to sign up. And I invite you to link to me on LinkedIn, join our institute groups, and communicate with each other more. Ask questions. There's no such thing as stupid question. And on that note, I'll say thank you.